When we think of the Turks, we see the image of the Great Steppe, the peoples we know from history as conquerors, nomads and warriors. Turks, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Azerbaijanis, these people spread from Eastern Europe to China. But what do we really know about the Turks? Where did they come from and how could they create such a powerful empire that has left its mark for thousands of years? We think we know the answers. The Turks came from the east, seized vast territories, uniting dozens of peoples in their ranks. But what if I told you that it might not be so clear? Today we will conduct an investigation that will reveal what is really hidden in the DNA of the Turks. Who are they, really? Are the peoples of the steppes who have left their mark on the whole of Eurasia, or is it the result of a more complex, multi-layered process? Think about it for a second. If you could trace the origin of the Turks through their genetic lines, what would you expect to see? The languages they brought, the cultures they created, all this should have left a mark in their blood. But what if we are mistaken in our understanding, and the history of the Turks is much more complex and multifaceted than it seems at first glance? First, let's look at the most obvious trace: language. Turks speak different languages, but they all belong to the same group, the Turkic language family. Just as Russians and Ukrainians speak Slavic languages, Turks speak Turkic languages. This is a long-standing sign that all of them were once part of a single nation. But what if it's just the outer shell? What if the inner world of these peoples is actually much more complicated? The theory that the Turks are a single people has been known to us for a long time. We used to think that they were always nomads, that their homeland was the Great Steppe. However, what if I say that the Turks were actually not only nomads, but also people who managed to adapt and take the best qualities from different peoples and cultures? What secrets might their DNA hide? When scientists began analyzing the genetic material of various Turkic peoples, they found something amazing. For example, it turned out that traces of not only Central Asia, but also Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and even Mongolia can be traced in the DNA of modern Turks. Yes, you heard right. The many genetic lines that the Turks have indicate that they not only roamed the steppes, but also actively contacted neighboring peoples, adopting their genetic and cultural experience. What does it mean? This means that the very peoples whom we used to consider only conquerors or nomads actually mixed their blood with their neighbors. DNA tests show that the genes of the Turks contain markers that are found among the peoples of the Caucasus, the peoples of Central Asia, and the Slavs, and this is far from an accident. Let's take a look at the Y chromosome, which is the male line that is passed down from father to son. In most Turkic peoples, for example, Kazakhs, Azerbaijanis, and Kyrgyz, male lines are dominated by markers that show their connection with the Mongolian and Turkic peoples. But what is interesting is that many of these peoples also have traces that may indicate a connection with the Caucasian and Iranian peoples. It's hard to imagine how this could happen, but it's a fact. It turns out that the Turks are not just conquerors from the east, but a people who, most likely, have been mixed with various cultures and peoples throughout their history. But here's the next surprise. Let's take a look at the women's line. Female DNA, or mitochondrial DNA, is passed from mother to children, and here we get completely unexpected results. As it turned out, the female line of Turks is much more stable and autochthonous than the male line. This means that women born in Turkic communities not only preserved local traditions and culture, but also passed on these traditions from generation to generation. So the same Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and other Turkic peoples are not just men who came from the east, but also women who preserved the ancient customs and traditions of these lands. This is a very important discovery, because it gives us an understanding of how and why the Turks were able to preserve their unique identity for so long. Imagine how important this discovery is for the entire history of the Turkic people. We used to think that nations, as a rule, preserve their culture and identity when they manage to remain isolated. But it turned out that culture persists even when mixed with other peoples, and this is what allowed the Turks to build such great empires as the Seljuk state, the Ottoman Empire, or the Mongol Empire. But there is another point that changes our whole view of the Turks. This is their ability to adapt. The Turks have always been a people who could change and adapt. Historians have long said that the Turkic peoples did not get stuck in the past, but constantly improved their technologies, culture, and social structures. Look at the Ottomans. They came from the steppes and became one of the most powerful rulers of Europe and Asia. And it wasn't just a military success. The Ottomans took the best from all the peoples they encountered, from the Arabs and Persians to the Slavs and the Byzantines. It was an empire that was able to integrate different cultures and make them its own. And now that we know that the Turks came from the East, but their genetics contains traces of many peoples, we should rethink everything we knew about them. These are not just nomads who have taken over foreign lands. They are a people who constantly mixed with the surrounding cultures, accepting their strengths and creating something unique. Their genes contain a history of integration and adaptation that allowed them to survive, develop, and create powerful states. After all, the Turks are a people who have proved that it is not isolation, but the ability to synthesize cultures and peoples that makes a nation strong. They came from the steppes, but they not only brought their own language and customs with them. They absorbed the culture and DNA of the peoples they crossed paths with. And it is this ability to change, adapt, and unite that is the key to their success. Today we see how the Turkic peoples continue to evolve, but their genetic heritage and cultural flexibility will remain an important part of their strength. This is a real mystery that we are just beginning to understand. So, if you've ever wondered who the Turks are, their DNA investigation has shown that they are not just peoples of the East, they are peoples of mixing, creation, and adaptation. They proved that the strength of the people is not in the purity of blood, but in the ability to be flexible and open to the whole world that meets them.